The small town of Cedar Ridge was just beginning another ordinary Saturday morning. Store owners were opening their doors, families were heading to parks, and children were planning how to spend their weekend. But for 10-year-old Mason Reed, nothing felt ordinary anymore. While other kids thought about games, movies, and friends, Mason could only think about one person, his little sister, Lily. Lily was 8 years old and had the brightest smile in town. She loved drawing colorful animals and filling every blank piece of paper she could find with her imagination. But lately that smile had become harder to see. A serious medical condition had left her weak and tired. Doctors had told Mason's mother that Lily needed an important surgery soon. Every day that passed felt like a countdown. Before we continue, if you enjoy emotional stories with powerful twists and inspiring moments, make sure to subscribe, turn on the bell icon, and join our WhatsApp channel through the link in the description. You will never miss the next unforgettable story. Mason understood more than most adults realized. Even though nobody discussed money around him, he often heard late-night conversations. Through the thin walls of their small house, he heard his mother, Claire, speaking quietly on the phone with hospitals, insurance offices, and medical specialists. He heard the worry in her voice growing heavier each week. One afternoon, Mason returned home from school earlier than usual. As he entered the kitchen, he stopped when he heard his mother talking. She didn't know he was listening. "I don't know where I'll find the rest of the money," Claire whispered. "I'm trying everything." The words stayed in Mason's mind long after the call ended. That evening he sat alone in his bedroom. His eyes slowly moved toward the gaming console sitting beside his television. It wasn't just a PlayStation. It was his favorite possession. He had spent years saving birthday money and holiday gifts to buy it. It held hundreds of memories with friends and family. For several minutes he stared at it without moving. Then he opened a drawer and pulled out a notebook. Carefully, he wrote down the amount of money still needed for Lily's treatment. The number looked impossible. Mason swallowed hard. His PlayStation would not solve everything, but it could help. And right then, a decision quietly formed in his mind. The next morning, before anyone else woke up, Mason opened a backpack and carefully placed the PlayStation inside, along with every game he owned. He zipped the bag shut and looked toward Lily's bedroom door. He wasn't sure if what he was about to do would make any difference, but he knew one thing for certain. He would do whatever it took to help his sister. And as Mason stepped outside carrying the backpack, he had no idea that one simple choice was about to attract the attention of a stranger who would change his family's future forever. The cool morning air brushed against Mason's face as he walked down the sidewalk with the backpack hanging heavily from his shoulders. Every step felt harder than the last. He had carried school books, sports equipment, and groceries before, but this backpack felt different. It carried something far more important than objects. It carried a sacrifice. The town was slowly waking up around him. Cars moved through intersections. Coffee shops welcomed their first customers, and shop owners arranged displays in their windows. Mason barely noticed any of it. His thoughts remained fixed on Lily. He remembered how she used to race through the house laughing. Now she became tired after only a few minutes of activity. Sometimes she tried to hide her discomfort so nobody would worry. That made Mason even more determined. 20 minutes later, he arrived at a game store called Pixel Planet. The large glass windows displayed posters for new releases and gaming accessories. Normally, Mason loved visiting the store. Today felt completely different. He pushed open the door and walked inside. A bell chimed overhead. Behind the counter stood a middle-aged man named Oliver Grant. He greeted Mason with a friendly smile. "Good morning, buddy. What can I help you with?" Mason slowly placed the backpack on the counter and unzipped it. Oliver's smile faded slightly as he saw the PlayStation and stack of games. "Trading these in?" he asked. Mason nodded. Oliver began checking each item. The process felt endless. Every game brought back memories. Every accessory reminded Mason of hours spent having fun with friends. Finally, Oliver finished the evaluation. He wrote a number on a small piece of paper and slid it across the counter. Mason looked down. The amount was lower than he had hoped. For a brief moment, disappointment flashed across his face. Oliver noticed "Are you sure you want to sell all of this?" he asked gently. Mason took a deep breath. "My little sister needs surgery," he said quietly. "She needs help more than I need games." The store suddenly became very quiet. Oliver stared at the boy, unable to speak for several seconds. At the far end of the store, another customer had been browsing accessories near a display shelf. The man slowly turned his head after hearing Mason's words. Unlike everyone else, he did not react immediately. Instead, he watched carefully. His expression revealed nothing. Mason accepted the payment, placed the envelope of money into his backpack, and thanked Oliver before heading toward the exit. As the door closed behind him, the mysterious customer continued staring through the window. Then he quietly asked a question that would change everything. "Who is that boy?" "Who is that boy?" Oliver looked toward the customer standing near the display shelves. The man appeared calm, but there was genuine curiosity in his voice. Oliver glanced through the front window. Mason was already walking down the sidewalk, the envelope safely tucked inside his backpack. "His name is Mason Reed," Oliver replied. "Good kid. Comes in here sometimes to look at games. Never causes trouble." The customer continued watching until Mason disappeared around the corner. "What did he mean about his sister needing surgery?" he asked. Oliver sighed. "I don't know all the details. I just know his family has been having a difficult time lately." The customer nodded slowly. Most people would have ended the conversation there. He did not. Instead, he asked more questions. Oliver shared only what little he knew. Mason lived with his mother and younger sister. The family had been struggling for months. Despite everything, they always remained kind and respectful. The customer listened carefully. Then he thanked Oliver and left the store. Outside, he paused beside a black SUV parked across the street. A woman sitting in the driver's seat lowered her window. "Everything okay, Mr. Carter?" she asked. The man looked back toward the game store. "I just met someone unusual," he replied. The woman seemed confused but didn't ask further questions. The man climbed into the vehicle. What neither Oliver nor Mason knew was that the customer was Nathan Carter, founder and CEO of Carter Innovations, a technology company worth billions of dollars. Nathan had attended business meetings around the world. He had met celebrities, politicians, and industry leaders. Yet somehow the words of a 10-year-old boy had stayed with him. "My little sister needs help more than I need games." The sentence echoed in his mind throughout the day. That evening, Nathan sat in his office overlooking downtown Seattle. Important documents covered his desk, but he struggled to focus. Finally, he pressed a button on his phone. A trusted assistant answered. "Yes, sir?" Nathan leaned back in his chair. "I need you to look into a family," he said. The assistant immediately opened a notebook. Nathan provided Mason's name and the town where he lived. The assistant sounded surprised. "Is this related to business?" "No," Nathan replied. "It's something more important." The next afternoon, a report arrived on Nathan's desk. As he read through the information, his expression slowly changed. The situation was even worse than he had imagined. Medical bills were growing, savings were nearly gone, and Lily's surgery deadline was getting closer. Nathan closed the file and stared out the window for several moments. Then he made a decision. He would not simply send money. He wanted to understand the family first. But as he prepared to take the next step, another discovery inside the report caught his attention. A detail connected to Mason's late father. And the moment Nathan read it, he realized this story might be far more personal than he ever expected. Nathan Carter remained seated in silence as he looked at the final page of the report. The name printed there immediately caught his attention. Daniel Reed, Mason's late father. Nathan slowly read the paragraph again to make sure he had not misunderstood. Nearly 12 years earlier, before Carter Innovations became successful, Nathan had been a young entrepreneur, struggling to keep his first small company alive. During that difficult period, a major equipment failure had threatened an important community technology project. Many people had refused to help because there was little money involved, but one person had volunteered his time without asking for anything in return. That person was Daniel Reed. Nathan remembered him immediately. Daniel had spent several weekends helping repair equipment and solve technical problems. Without his help, the project would have failed completely. Back then, Nathan had offered payment. Daniel had politely refused. "I already have enough," Daniel had said. "If someone needs help and I can help them, that's enough for me." Nathan had never forgotten those words. Now, years later, he was staring at Daniel's family file. Life had taken unexpected turns for both men. Nathan had built a billion-dollar company. Daniel had passed away several years earlier. Yet somehow their stories had crossed paths again. Nathan closed the file and stood up. The next morning, he decided to visit Cedar Ridge personally. A few hours later, his SUV entered the quiet town. Nathan dressed casually to avoid attention. He spent the afternoon walking through local shops and speaking with residents. Everywhere he went, people described the Reed family in the same way. Kind, honest, hard-working. Nobody had a negative word to say about them. As evening approached, Nathan stopped at a small bakery near the town square. While ordering coffee, he overheard two women talking nearby. "Claire Reed works harder than anyone I know," one woman said. "She never complains," the other replied, "even with everything happening to Lily." Nathan listened carefully. The more he learned, the more determined he became to help. But he still wanted to approach the family the right way. He did not want them to feel like a charity project. As he left the bakery, something unexpected happened. Across the street, he spotted Mason. The boy was carrying several grocery bags and walking toward home. Nathan watched from a distance. Then he noticed something else. Mason stopped when he saw an elderly neighbor struggling with a heavy package. Without hesitation, Mason set down his own bags and helped carry the package to the woman's porch. The woman thanked him repeatedly. Mason simply smiled and continued walking. Nathan shook his head in amazement. The boy had already sacrificed his favorite possession for his sister, yet he still found time to help others. At that moment, Nathan became certain of one thing. Helping the Reed family was no longer just a kind gesture. It was something he felt personally responsible for. But unknown to both Nathan and Mason, another surprise was already on its way. And within the next few days, a mysterious letter would arrive at the Reed house, raising far more questions than answers. 3 days passed quietly in Cedar Ridge. Mason continued helping his mother however he could. He carried groceries, cleaned the house, and spent hours beside Lily whenever she felt tired. Although he tried to stay positive, he could see the growing concern in Claire's eyes each time she checked medical documents spread across the kitchen table. One Tuesday afternoon, Claire returned home from work and found an unusual envelope resting inside the mailbox. There was no company logo, no return address, only their family name written neatly across the front. Claire frowned as she carried it inside. "What is it?" Mason asked. "I have no idea," Claire replied. The three of them gathered around the kitchen table. Carefully, Claire opened the envelope. Inside was a single handwritten letter. She unfolded the paper and began reading aloud. The letter praised Mason's kindness and sacrifice. It spoke about courage, family, and the power of helping others even during difficult times. Then it invited the Reed family to attend a special event in Seattle the following weekend. No explanation was provided. No organization was mentioned, only a time, a location, and one sentence that immediately caught everyone's attention. "Your presence is important." Claire looked confused. Who would send something like this? Mason shrugged. Lily looked excited. Maybe it's a surprise party. That made everyone laugh for the first time in days. Still, Claire remained cautious. The invitation seemed strange. She considered throwing it away. After all, traveling to Seattle was expensive, and they had far more important things to worry about. But later that evening, another surprise arrived. Claire received a phone call from an unknown number. She almost ignored it. Fortunately, she answered. The caller spoke politely and professionally. The woman confirmed details from the invitation and explained that transportation and accommodations had already been arranged. Everything would be covered. Claire asked several questions. The caller answered some but avoided others. Before ending the conversation, she repeated one statement. "We sincerely hope your family can attend." After the call ended, Claire sat quietly. The situation felt unusual. Yet nothing seemed dangerous or dishonest. The next morning, she made her decision. They would go. When Mason heard the news, he felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness. Something about the invitation felt important. He simply could not explain why. As the week passed, anticipation continued building. Finally, Saturday arrived. The family boarded transportation, arranged by the event organizers, and traveled toward Seattle. Hours later, the city's skyline appeared in the distance. Lily pressed her face against the window in amazement. Mason smiled as he watched her excitement. For a few moments, she looked like her old self again. When they finally arrived at the large conference center listed in the invitation, Mason's eyes widened. Hundreds of people were entering the building. Television cameras stood near the entrance. Large screens displayed photographs and videos. The event was far bigger than anything he had imagined. Then a volunteer approached the family. She checked a list, smiled warmly, and said something that instantly made Mason's heart race. "Welcome, Reed family. Everyone has been waiting for you." Mason exchanged a puzzled glance with his mother. Why would an entire event be waiting for them? And who had arranged all of this in the first place? Mason exchanged a puzzled glance with his mother as the volunteer guided them through the entrance of the conference center. The building was far larger than anything they had expected. Bright lights filled the enormous hall, and hundreds of guests occupied rows of seats facing a massive stage. Large screens displayed stories about kindness, courage, and people who had made a difference in the lives of others. Claire still looked uncertain. "There must be some mistake," she whispered. But the volunteer smiled. "There is no mistake." The family was escorted to seats near the front of the auditorium. That only increased Mason's confusion. Why would ordinary people like them be seated so close to the stage? As more guests entered, soft music played throughout the hall. Cameras moved between rows, capturing reactions from audience members. Lily looked around excitedly. "This place is amazing," she said. Mason nodded, but his attention remained fixed on the stage. Something important was about to happen. He could feel it. A few minutes later, the lights slowly dimmed. Conversations faded. The audience became silent. A presenter walked onto the stage and welcomed everyone to the annual Community Impact Celebration, an event honoring people whose actions had inspired others. The presentation began. Stories appeared on the giant screens. Teachers, firefighters, volunteers, and everyday citizens were recognized for helping people in need. The audience applauded each story warmly. Then, nearly an hour into the event, the presenter paused. His expression became serious. "Sometimes," he said, "the most powerful acts of kindness come from the people we least expect." The large screens suddenly went dark. The room became completely silent. A new video began playing. Mason watched casually at first. Then his eyes widened. The video showed Pixel Planet, the game store where he had sold his PlayStation. A ripple of surprise moved through the audience. Mason froze. His heart began beating faster. The footage continued. Although no security cameras were shown, the video recreated the story using interviews and photographs. It explained how a young boy had willingly given up his most treasured possession to help his little sister. The audience listened carefully. Many people became emotional. Then a photograph of Mason appeared on the giant screen. Gasps echoed throughout the auditorium. Claire covered her mouth in shock. Lily looked at her brother with wide eyes. Mason could barely move. The presenter smiled toward the front row. "Please stand, Mason Reed." For several seconds, Mason remained frozen. The audience began applauding. Slowly, he stood up. The applause grew louder. Hundreds of strangers rose to their feet. Some were wiping away tears. Others were smiling proudly. Mason had never experienced anything like it. Yet the biggest surprise had not happened yet. As the applause continued, a familiar figure emerged from the side of the stage. The moment Mason saw him, recognition flashed across his face. It was the customer from the game store, the same man who had quietly watched him sell his PlayStation. The audience erupted with excitement as the man approached the microphone. Then the presenter revealed his identity. "Please welcome entrepreneur and CEO Nathan Carter." The room exploded into applause once again. But Mason barely heard it, because Nathan looked directly at him and smiled. And it was immediately clear that everything that had happened so far had been leading to this moment. The room slowly grew quiet as Nathan Carter stepped toward the center of the stage. Mason remained standing beside his seat. still trying to understand what was happening. His mother looked equally shocked, while Lily held tightly onto his arm. Nathan smiled warmly before speaking. "Good evening, everyone." The audience responded with applause. Nathan waited for the room to settle again. "A few weeks ago, I walked into a small game store in Cedar Ridge," he began. "I expected an ordinary day. Instead, I witnessed something I will never forget. The giant screens displayed a picture of Pixel Planet," Nathan continued. "I watched a young boy make a sacrifice that many adults would struggle to make. The audience listened carefully. He gave up something he loved because helping his sister mattered more." Nathan turned toward Mason. The entire auditorium followed his gaze. Mason suddenly felt every eye in the building focused on him. Nathan smiled. "Mason, would you join me on stage?" The audience applauded once again. Mason looked nervously at his mother. Claire nodded encouragingly. Slowly, Mason walked toward the stage. The crowd cheered as he climbed the steps. Nathan shook his hand. "You are much braver than you realize," he said. Mason thanked him quietly. Then Nathan addressed the audience once more. "After learning Mason's story, I wanted to know more about his family. What I discovered inspired me even more. Photos of the Reed family appeared on the giant screens. Nathan explained how Claire worked tirelessly to support her children and how Lily continued smiling despite difficult medical challenges. The audience became emotional. Then Nathan paused. The room grew completely silent. "I believe kindness should never go unnoticed," he said. "For that reason, my foundation has made a decision." Everyone leaned forward. Even Mason held his breath. Nathan smiled. "Effective immediately. Every medical expense related to Lily's surgery and recovery will be fully covered." For a moment, nobody moved. The words seemed almost impossible to believe. Then the audience erupted into thunderous applause. Claire burst into tears. Lily covered her mouth in shock. Mason stared at Nathan, unable to speak. Years of worry seemed to disappear in a single moment. But Nathan raised his hand gently. "There is more." The audience quickly became quiet again. Mason felt his heart racing. Nathan looked toward the giant screens. "While researching this family, I discovered something unexpected." A photograph suddenly appeared behind him. The image showed a younger man standing beside technical equipment many years earlier. Mason immediately recognized him. It was his father. The audience murmured softly. Nathan's expression became emotional. "Many years ago, before my company became successful, this man helped me during one of the most difficult periods of my life." The room became silent once again. Nathan looked directly at Mason. "Your father expected nothing in return. He simply helped because someone needed help." Mason felt tears forming in his eyes. Then Nathan revealed one final surprise. "And because of the example your father set, I have been working on something special for months." The audience waited eagerly. "What happens next?" Nathan said. "We'll honor both his kindness and your courage." And as the giant screen changed to a new image, the entire audience gasped. The entire audience gasped as the image on the giant screen changed. Mason slowly turned around to look. Across the screen appeared the words, "The Daniel Reed Family Hope Fund." For a moment, Mason could not fully understand what he was seeing. The audience remained silent, waiting for Nathan Carter to continue. Nathan smiled warmly. "Months ago, when I learned about Daniel Reed and the impact he had on others, I started thinking about how one act of kindness can continue, changing lives long after a person is gone." A new slide appeared. It showed families receiving assistance with medical expenses, transportation and recovery support. Nathan continued speaking. "This fund will help families facing serious medical challenges for years to come. Every family selected will receive support during difficult times, just as Daniel once supported others when they needed help." The audience erupted into applause. Mason felt overwhelmed. His father's name would now be connected to helping people across the country. Nathan looked directly at him. "Your father's kindness inspired this project." Then he looked toward Lily. "And your courage inspired us to launch it sooner than planned." Claire wiped tears from her eyes. She could barely believe what was happening. For years she had worried about paying bills and protecting her children. Now hundreds of people were standing and applauding her family. But Nathan was not finished yet. A staff member walked onto the stage carrying a small wooden box. The audience immediately became curious. Nathan accepted the box and carefully opened it. Inside was a collection of photographs and documents. He turned toward Mason. "While researching your father's work, we discovered something he left behind." Mason stepped closer. Nathan handed him one of the photographs. It showed Daniel Reed, working beside several volunteers during the community technology project many years earlier. Everyone in the picture looked happy. Then Nathan revealed a handwritten note that had been stored with the photographs. The note had been written by Daniel. Nathan read part of it aloud. "If you have the ability to help someone, never wait for the perfect moment. Help them today." The room fell completely silent. Many people in the audience became emotional. Mason stared at the note. Even though his father was gone, hearing those words felt like hearing his voice again. Nathan carefully returned the note to the box. Then he smiled. Daniel never knew how many lives his actions would touch. The audience applauded once more. As the celebration continued, reporters began gathering near the stage. News organizations wanted interviews. Guests wanted photographs. Everyone wanted to meet the family whose story had inspired the entire event. But while the audience celebrated, something unexpected was happening behind the scenes. One of Nathan's assistants had just received an important phone call. The information was surprising, very surprising. The assistant quickly approached Nathan and whispered something into his ear. Nathan's eyes widened. For the first time all evening, he looked completely stunned. And whatever he had just learned was about to make this unforgettable night even more extraordinary. For the first time that evening, Nathan Carter looked genuinely surprised. The audience continued applauding, unaware that something unexpected had just happened behind the scenes. Nathan listened carefully as his assistant whispered a few more words. Then he nodded slowly. "Thank you," he said quietly. The assistant stepped away. For several seconds, Nathan remained silent, thinking. Mason noticed the change immediately. Something important had happened. The audience gradually settled back into their seats, waiting for the program to continue. Nathan finally returned to the microphone. A small smile appeared on his face. "It seems tonight has one more surprise for all of us." Excited murmurs spread through the room. Nathan looked toward Mason and Claire. "A few minutes ago I received information that I did not expect." The giant screens behind him displayed a photograph of the old community technology project where Daniel Reed had volunteered years earlier. Nathan continued. "After our team shared Daniel's story publicly, people from across the country began contacting us. Several photographs appeared on the screen. Different men and women smiled from various locations. Some of these people worked alongside Daniel many years ago," Nathan explained. "Others were helped by him in ways we never knew." The audience listened closely. One by one, recorded video messages began playing. In each message, someone shared a memory about Daniel. A teacher explained how Daniel had repaired school computers for free. A retired veteran described how Daniel had helped him learn new technology after an injury. A local charity director spoke about equipment Daniel had donated when funding was scarce. With every story, the audience learned more about the kind of person Daniel had been. Claire wiped away tears. Many of these stories were completely new to her. Even she had not known about all the people her husband had quietly helped. Then Nathan revealed the information that had surprised him. After hearing Daniel's story today, several former project volunteers contacted our foundation. A new number appeared on the giant screen. The audience gasped. Nathan smiled. Together, they have contributed enough funding to expand the Daniel Reed Family Hope Fund far beyond its original size. The audience erupted into applause. The amount displayed would allow the foundation to help hundreds of families over the coming years. Mason could hardly believe it. His father's kindness was continuing to grow even after all these years. Nathan placed a hand on Mason's shoulder. "Most people hope to leave something valuable behind," he said. "Your father left something much greater than money. He left a legacy of kindness." The audience stood once again, but as the applause filled the auditorium, Mason suddenly noticed something in the wooden box Nathan had given him earlier. A folded envelope hidden beneath the photographs. The envelope had Daniel Reed's handwriting on the front, and written across it were 4 simple words. For Mason, when older. Mason stared at the envelope in shock. Neither he nor his mother had ever seen it before, and whatever message waited inside could become the most personal surprise of the entire night. Mason stood completely still, staring at the folded envelope inside the wooden box. The words written on it felt heavier than anything he had ever held before. For Mason, when older. His hands trembled slightly as he slowly picked it up. The entire auditorium became quiet again. Even Nathan Carter did not speak. Claire leaned forward, unable to understand what was happening. Lily held her breath, watching her brother closely. Mason looked at Nathan. "What is this?" he asked softly. Nathan's expression became calm but emotional. "That," he said, "is something your father left for you." Mason's heart beat faster. He carefully opened the envelope. Inside was a handwritten letter. The paper was slightly aged, but the ink was clear. Mason began reading silently at first. Then, without realizing it, his voice came out slowly, so the microphone picked it up. "My dear Mason, if you are reading this, it means I am no longer with you." A wave of silence spread through the audience. Mason paused, swallowing hard, but continued. "I hope you're taking care of your mother and your little sister. I hope you are being strong, even when life feels unfair." Claire closed her eyes as tears streamed down her face. Mason continued reading. "I do not know what your future will look like, but I know one thing for sure. You have a good heart. Never let the world change that." Nathan quietly stepped back, giving Mason space. The letter continued. "If you ever feel lost, remember this. The greatest value in life is not what we own, but what we give to others." Mason's voice shook slightly, but he kept reading. "I once helped a young man who was struggling to build something important. I never asked for anything in return. Today, I know that help became something much bigger than I ever imagined." Nathan lowered his head for a moment. Mason looked up briefly, trying to understand. Then he read the final part of the letter. "One day, someone may come to you and offer help when you least expect it. Do not be afraid. Sometimes life returns kindness in ways we cannot imagine." The room was completely silent. Even the cameras stopped moving. Mason slowly lowered the letter. His eyes were full of tears. He finally understood. This entire journey, the game store, the CEO, the event, the fund, it was not random. It was all connected to his father's kindness. Nathan stepped forward again. "There is something else you should know," he said quietly. Mason looked at him. Nathan took a deep breath. "When your father helped me years ago, I was not yet successful. I was close to giving up everything." The audience listened closely. "He believed in me when no one else did. And I promised myself that if I ever became able to help someone the same way, I would not hesitate." Nathan turned toward Mason. "So when I saw you sacrifice your most valued possession for your sister, I saw your father in you." Claire covered her mouth, crying harder now. Nathan continued. "That is why I did not just want to help your sister." He paused. "I wanted to continue your father's promise." The giant screen behind him changed one final time. It showed Mason standing beside Lily in a bright, healthy future, smiling, laughing, free from worry. Then real footage followed. Doctors confirming Lily's successful treatment coverage. Hospital arrangements already completed. Full funding secured not only for Lily, but for future care. The audience erupted in applause again, but this time it felt different. Warmer, deeper, more emotional. Nathan placed a hand on Mason's shoulder. "Your father's kindness did not end with him," he said softly. "It continued through you, and now it will continue through many others." Mason finally broke down in tears. But they were not only tears of sadness. They were tears of relief, hope, and understanding. As the event slowly came to an end, the audience stood once more. Not for a CEO, not for a presentation, but for a 10-year-old boy whose small sacrifice had started something far bigger than anyone could have imagined. And in that moment, Mason realized one simple truth. Sometimes the smallest decision can change an entire world. What would you do if you were Mason and had to choose between your favorite thing and saving your sister's life? Tell us in comments. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel and press the bell icon for more inspiring stories.